Hey, this is Professor Dave, and it's Chalk Talk time. If you've been following this video series, I showed you how to build this Tech Superstars app, which takes data from a spreadsheet and displays it on a homepage. And then if you click on one of the people, it shows more information about the person, and you can go back. Okay. But the general idea is you could take any spreadsheet or database, and the code in this app or the way we set this app up will work on any data. So don't think of it as just like a Techstars or CS Stars app. You could also use it for a Meet My Classmates app, or for your sports team, or a to-do list, or your favorite musicians, your family app, COVID hotspots, or game high scores, right? So it's weird. Software's weird. Like, you build something, and even though you want to use it for something that's like completely different in terms of theme or data, the code can be almost the same. So anyway, I definitely encourage you to think about remixing the Tech Superstar app into an app of your choosing. Okay, so Chalk Talk. I want to talk about kind of computer science terminology, software development terminology, and you kind of want to start building up your vocabulary for this kind of stuff. So one term is persistent data, and this is just data that lives on even after an app is closed. Okay, and not all data does that. Certainly, we're storing everything in a spreadsheet, and that's our persistent data. And that data can be, either personal or shared, right? There's some apps like, maybe you have a workout app, or a app where you enter appreciations, or where it's just private, right? But often the data is shared in the cloud, right? And our Google Sheet or is definitely in the cloud. There's other kinds of databases and spreadsheets that you can use for the persistent data. We use Google Sheets because it's one that everybody's kind of familiar with. But with Thunkable, you can also use Airtable and Firebase, and there's hundreds of different database systems or spreadsheet systems to store your data in. Airtable and Firebase, don't let those scare you. They're very easy to use, though they do allow you to do some more complicated things. Okay, with persistent data, the data can be from the outside world, right? The world is full of data, right? There's all kinds of research being done, and there's all kinds of sensors out there. And our big challenge is, how do you make sense of all that data? And in fact, being able to take a sheet and get it into an app is step number one. Okay, so besides the kind of data that's out there, you can also build apps with user generated data. This is even more common, right? So the user enters something maybe in a form, and you want to store that, and you can store that into your spreadsheet or your database. I'm going to show you that in the next video, or the next part of this video series. So user entered data, there's also like user generated, meaning let's say a user's playing a game, but you record all their scores, right? Or their high score list or whatever. So all that might come into user generated data. But just one thing I'm trying to get you to think of is the kind of genericness of apps, and all apps tend to have this kind of data, and you just need to learn how to code that data. Okay, so with Thunkable, we use something called a data source, and that is just kind of a handle. You basically say, look, I want to use this spreadsheet, and it lets you choose a spreadsheet, and then you have a name for it, and then you can. The nice thing is Thunkable kind of analyzes the whatever spreadsheet you give it. It finds out what the column headers are, and then it lets you choose those when you're trying to, say, display certain things. So data sources are nice, and then you connect them if you want to actually display information with either a data viewer grid or a data viewer list. And that's kind of what I showed in this series. Data source is the handle, data viewer grid and list. They show partial info from a spreadsheet, either in grid form or kind of single dimensional list. Okay, so navigating to another screen. This is probably the harder part. We actually did some code blocks to make this happen. What you wanted was, when you click on one of these women, you want it to show their information in the second screen. And in fact, to do that, we built what's called an event handler. So in Thunkable, you can go to design and blocks. Those are the two panels. If you go to blocks, you can drag in these blocks like this. This yellow one's called an event handler. And it's a when do block is another name for event handler is when do, but it basically means when some external event occurs, how does the app respond? So in the external event in this case is the user touching one of the items on the grid. Okay. And then the response is all the blocks inside here. So these are things the app is going to do. And it's only going to do them when this event occurs. So when the user clicks that item, we kind of remember we set a variable's value to this row ID. So we know the ID of the spreadsheet row that basically got clicked. Okay. So we store that in a variable and then we navigate to the info screen. So our response within our event handler has two operations. Okay. But this whole yellow thing, including what's inside it, we call an event handler. Okay. The second thing was the whole idea of this variable. And a variable is a memory cell. And for this app, we created one. We initialized what an app variable means, one that you're just going to use temporarily. And we named it row. And we kind of by default set to 0. But the reason we even created this variable is because we needed to remember, oh yeah, they clicked on Tara or Jennifer. We need to remember the ID of the one they clicked on. So we kind of stick it in the variable. And then later, when we get to the other screen, when we get to the second screen, we say, oh, what was that row ID again? And so we grab it from the variable. And so variables are just a way to remember things. And in this case, what we were remembering was the row ID. So event handlers are kind of a fundamental construct of how the app responds to events. And then variables is more like the brain or the memory, right, of the app. And it can remember, it's like the short-term memory. So I've got a short-term memory cell called row, which remembers which item was clicked. Okay, so yeah, just with variables, a memory cell to remember something, just to summarize. And when we get to the info screen, you need to have remembered the star was selected on the previous screen. And then once we got to the info screen, we actually use that variable. So it's kind of like put something in. That's what set means. It means, store something in a memory cell. And then when you just see just the variable name, app variable row, it means, oh, go grab something out of that memory cell. And in this case, go grab it, and that'll tell us which kind of, column to grab in order to set the picture of the title and the text of the label, of the description label. Okay, next in this series, we're going to allow users to input additional superstars. So far our app has no user generated data, and that's what we'll do next. And then, further down the line, I'll show you how to do registration and login. I'll actually give you some template screens, which you can configure to allow users to log in, which of course, really when users are entering information, you definitely want them, you want to authorize them, and then you have a user ID, which you can tag stuff with. So anyway, thanks for checking out this tutorial, and make sure to visit draganddropcode.com for more. Thank you.